WNST, Taos and Bo back home for a weekend with the dreaded Toronto Blue Jays. And amidst all of this fanfare, Preakness 142 going to happen out on Old Hilltop. We got black-eyed Susies and pink outfits and tents and celebrities and 10 horses and one big prize and always dreaming the odds-on favorite. This guy covers all things international sports, business, and thoroughbred racing out at the Pollock Report and PollockReport.com. He is Ray Pollock. You can also follow him out on Twitter as well. He's based down in Lexington, Kentucky, where they have beautiful bluegrass and great horses. And I still have never been to Keeneland, and Marty McGee's pissed at me about that, Ray Pollock. I got to be honest with you. How you been, man?
I'm good. Yeah, you got to get to Keeneland. Springtime is the best time, and you might even get to see a horse that's prepping for the Derby if you come on Bluegrass Day or one of the other big days.
You don't have to talk my wife in. My wife loves horses. I've been promising to take her up to one of the farms or Sagamore or something and look at foals and, the whole deal. But I've been to about 8 or 9 derbies, I think, through this, and I love the Derby. I think the Derby is the greatest sporting event in America. I know you have some spires up on your Twitter, as I see here out of Ray Pollock on Twitter. For this race and for where we are right now, we have a horse with a real chance of a Triple Crown and a horse that's going to come in here Saturday that looks very, very tough to beat, right?
I think so too, because he's got. I spoke with Kent DeSormo, who doesn't have a mount this year. Kent rode Exaggerator last year to win the Preakness, and he's won it twice before. Of course, he was based here in Maryland in the late 1980s. So I thought Kent would be a great guy to talk to, just to kind of get his perspective on how you're supposed to ride in the Preakness. This track is a little different than others. And I said, what kind of a running style does it usually take to win the Preakness? And his answer was Always Dreaming. So he thinks that Always Dreaming will win the Preakness. He's a horse that's got he's got enough early speed to get a good position. The jockey can put him wherever he wants to. And it's the kind of race, as Kent also said, he said, you ride like the finish line is at the 8th pole. The 8th pole is an eighth of a mile. And he says, it's so hard to pass horses inside the 8th pole. So ride like the 8th pole is the finish line. And I'm pretty sure that Always Dreaming is going to be in front of that stage.
Yeah, I'll get back to the race in a minute, but I love a guy that covers the business of this because year after year, and I've been in this quagmire forever. I mean, I own a radio station. I've owned it for 20 years. I've attempted to do business with the Maryland Jockey Club over the years, whether it was Stronach and Magna, and, we're going to get slots and we're not going to get slots, and the purses are going down, and here they're coming back up, and the race is going to move to Gulfstream, or it's going to move to Del Mar, it's going to move to Saratoga, or it's going to move to East Bejesus. They're going to extend this thing out from 2 weeks further on, and I think Pletcher may agree with that. And where the Belmont might be run on the 4th of July for all we know. And through all of this, nothing changes. The toilet's still barely flush. And they're going to have the race here this week. I think the purses have changed here dramatically with slots and with casinos here in our state. But the business of horse racing it never feels like it's heading in the right direction for me because I never see massive progress here. And I know they're dumping a little money into Laurel and like all that. But are you concerned that 10, 15 years, 20 years from now, the Preakness wouldn't be in Baltimore, wouldn't be in Maryland?
I don't think the Preakness is going to move out of Maryland, but I would be surprised if it's not at Laurel within a matter of years, because everybody here saw the study. It's going to take $300 million to rebuild or renovate, and it's not a typical renovation. It's an extensive renovation. So who's going to come up with $300 million? It's not going to be the Stronach Group. They've been very clear about that. They're putting tens of millions of dollars into Laurel right now, and they want to host the Breeders' Cup, which may not be quite as big as the Derby or the Triple Crown, but it's a big 2-day racing festival in the fall, and they want to have the Breeders' Cup by 2020 or 2021, and I think they've got a serious chance of doing that. To me, as someone who's not from Baltimore, I don't see a big difference between having it at Pimlico or having it at Laurel. It's going to be a great economic impact for the city of Baltimore, no matter which track it's on. People come from out of town and they stay at hotels and they go out at night and spend money and they do all that stuff. But I do understand that it's, the People's Party or whatever it's called, but big events are changing. The Derby, they expanded the racetrack there so they could put in all these luxury suites. They even kicked the media out of the press box, and they turned that into something called the Mansion, and they put the media down on the ground floor in a windowless dungeon.
Bastards. I
I
didn't
know.
even know that. I mean, I
Yeah.
haven't been there the last couple of years. My wife's been
Yeah.
been battling illness the last few years, so we just haven't made it down there. And when it rained 2 weeks ago, my wife's like, "Oh, we picked the right year to stay away this year. The year we go, we want to wear hats and have it be beautiful and all that." And from a media experience, there was one of my favorite events to cover. With being able to walk around and see people and see things and really drink in the race, literally and figuratively, Ray. You know what I mean? You got to have a mint julep down there. But I think of that race in such glorious tones because I've never had a bad experience at the Kentucky Derby.
Well, if you get a media pass this year, you're going to be watching this. You're going to be watching it from inside a windowless room, or you might stand outside, but it's not like the old days where the press box was on top of the building and you had this wonderful view of the race, wonderful view of the entire facility. You could soak in the atmosphere. Someone at Churchill Downs said, "Hey, this is a really nice area. Why don't we sell it to millionaires?" So it's about the most expensive ticket you can buy for the Kentucky Derby, and it's a place they call the Mansion, and it's the old press box. So we got screwed.
Oh, well, yeah, it's business, right? I mean, that's the business of thoroughbred. Look, they're in the business of making a buck wherever they can at this point. And I do, year after year when I have guys like you on, I'm like, how are things? And I guess the difference now is there's so much off track. For all those years, they never wanted to let you bet on a race anywhere but at the racetrack. And, of course, in the back of a bookmaker's place in Highlandtown or whatever, all that was going on in Baltimore in the 40s and 50s and 60s, at least from what I hear, Ray, from the business side of things, from what I know of things around the neighborhood. But, now it's a whole different world where you swipe a credit card, you click away, and you can sit on a beach in Bimini and bet races at Belmont, right?
That's right. You can, in virtually any state now, there's some states that don't let you do it, but you get out your phone, you click onto any number of legal wagering services.
Portals.
And you can bet with your phone, and you can watch the race on your phone. So it's the effect that has had, along with all the competition that we now have for gambling, that has had a huge impact on the racing business. You go to almost any track now, with a few exceptions. Del Mar, Saratoga up in New York, Del Mar's in California, and Keeneland. The places are empty most of the time. The wagering dollars may be bigger than they were 10, 20 years ago, but the crowds aren't there, and that's because they're staying home. Or in a lot of cases, a lot of people that gamble on racing now gamble on other stuff because there are casinos virtually everywhere, whereas 25 years ago you had to go to Las Vegas or Atlantic City.
How much did American Pharoah change all this stuff? I mean, he's baby making now, right? So that's all about to hit the market in the next 2-3 years, and we'll be hearing Pharoah this and American that everywhere we go. I'm sure with the stud pricing, and there's so much money that still is a fallout of having a special animal as well as a special trainer and a special jockey that went along with that horse, right?
Yeah, the American Pharoah effect. I mean, he's gonna his stud fee is high for the first few years, but if his Colts and fillies can't run, his stud fee is going to go south really fast. I look at the American Pharoah phenomenon the same way I looked at the Tiger Woods phenomenon in golf, except in golf he was king for a decade or something.
Sure.
He did make golf more popular, but they're selling golf courses right and left and developing them for housing because the golf boom ended. It was a short term assist, but I think that's the way American Pharoah is for horse racing. Yeah, he got people interested for a short time. Maybe some of them became long-term fans, but it's not gonna change the game just because we had a Triple Crown winner.
Internationally, my wife and I got a chance to travel back in February and into March, and we were in Australia and we were in New Zealand, and both places we went, they were having, major parties, major stake. I don't know. I don't even know the names of the races. They were like the Ascot, in My Fair Lady. But all of that was going on over there. There's a whole world outside of the American side of this, and from the Baltimore experience, where there's Kentucky, Baltimore, and Belmont, and I know people here know about Gulfstream or know about Keeneland or know about certainly Saratoga or other places, but outside of this country, there's a vibrant scene for horse racing. Yeah.
Yeah, horse racing is much more popular around the world than it is in the United States. And here's an example for you. In Hong Kong, they have two racetracks. They're both in the city of Hong Kong. One's actually downtown. It's like having a racetrack in Central Park in New York. It is literally in the downtown area with skyscrapers around it.
I'm familiar with it. I passed it, and I thought it was like a running track, but realized it was too big, and then they told me they ran horses on it. So I do remember.
So they race at that track on Wednesday night, and then they race at the other track, which is more of a suburban track, on Sundays. They race 2 days a week. They don't even race 52 weeks a year. But they handle more money in wages. They handle more bets, more dollars over the course of a year than we do in the United States on every racetrack all year. It's unthinkable how much
that's a crazy number when I start to put that together.
Yeah,
twice a week versus 600 races a week in America. I mean, how many races get run in America in a week?
God, you can bet on. I haven't thought about that, but
10 a day, 4 days a week, 40, 50 races per track versus how many tracks are running. It's a lot of races, man.
15 to 20 tracks at any one time. Yeah. So it's just an unthinkable number what they handle. And racing is very, very popular, as you said, in Australia. In Japan, it's popular. Europe, they've had some struggles in Europe, but the thing that's true everywhere is that the big events, the Derbies, the Preaknesses, the Royal Ascots, the Melbourne Cups, they become more than just a day of horse racing. It's a chance for people to go out shopping and buy fancy outfits and wear their hats and.
Well, it's a cultural affair. I mean, certainly in Louisville, it is a civic holiday, and I know the people here have tried hard for a couple of decades. And look, I went down there for the Oaks 20 years ago. I'd never even heard of the Oaks, man, right? Mm-hmm. And I went down there. Everybody said, you got to go to the Oaks. The Oaks. I'm like, was that some special place? I got to no, that's the name of the race. Oh, okay. Next thing you know, I'm at the Oaks, and I was maybe 22, 23. The girls were all 22, 23. I found out it was the day all the secretaries actually showed up because the high rollers took their tickets for Saturday and gave their tickets to their employees, and I saw it as like the biggest party I'd ever been to, and all I could think about was, this is 1994, 95, I'm thinking, why don't they do that in Baltimore? And now, they've caught on here. I mean, the pink thing's on, the Black-Eyed Susan, they've really turned it into something bigger, but certainly the market penetration during my lifetime, it was a bigger deal in our community 30 years ago where everyone stopped, everyone wanted to be there, everyone wanted to participate. It's jumped the shark in that way, Yeah,
the Friday of Black-Eyed Susan Day hasn't caught on the way the Oaks has. And part of the problem that
well, they give the kids off from school there, right? I mean, like literally, no one goes to work on that day. It's sort of like the Boston Monday on the Marathon. I mean, like the city is shut down. It is a local holiday. There's not a whole lot of places that do that for anything, quite frankly, right?
Well, the Oaks Day on Friday has really gotten. It used to be called Louisville's Day at the Races, and it's gotten to be so expensive that a lot of people in Louisville can't even afford to go Friday. So now what Churchill Downs has done, and it's a smart thing, is they're trying to make Thursday a big event. So and they even have a funny name for it. They call it Thurby.
Thurby.
Like
Thursday
Derby,
Thurby.
So
the NFL does this. They call it Thursday Night Football. We call it garbage. But yes,
but they've taken their franchise and they've made it as strong as they can possibly make it on Friday and Saturday, and now they're trying to build Thursday up. And I don't recall what the attendance was on Thursday, but people were streaming into the track that day. I mean, it was a big crowd, not as big as obviously as Oaks Day, where they have over 100,000, but and they just haven't caught on with that as much here at the Preakness. I think in part because, the facility is, the facility is just not a lot of fun to go to.
Well, let's talk about that. I mean, you talked about the amount of money it was going to take to make this whole. Look, we talked about this super track, and I know Kevin Plank's coming in, dumping all his shoe money into horse racing, but this is a whole different business model where, does it make any sense to build that kind of a track that people might not come to? And I went down to Gulfstream 10, 15 years ago when they remodeled that, and I walked through that thing, and I thought, this is the most beautiful thing ever. If they moved it to Baltimore, would anybody come? The answer to that was probably no. That's my honest answer, having lived here my whole life.
Yeah, I like to call Gulfstream Park the only a 21st century racetrack, because it's a casino racetrack blend, and it's got a lot of high-end amenities, and that's what makes Churchill Downs the money that they make on the Derby weekend, and that's what is preventing the Maryland Jockey Club, I think, in a lot of ways, from making much money on the Preakness. In that study that the Maryland Stadium Authority did, it said that Churchill Downs revenue on the Derby weekend is 9 times as much as Maryland Jockey Club revenue on the Preakness, and that's strictly ticket sales, and the inability to sell luxury suites to people and that sort of thing. So racing is just like sports in a lot of ways. The stadiums need luxury suites. I think I read where they're gonna remodel or renovate M&T Bank Stadium so they can sell more luxury suites for the high end people that come to football games. That's changed. Even Wrigley Field, my favorite ballpark, because I'm from the Chicago area, they've renovated that place and they've got luxury suites now.
He is Ray Pollock. He does all things horse racing at PollockReport.com, as well as at Ray Pollock, that's Paulick, out on Twitter, and covering the game and the business of this. And here we come with all the connections, all the stories. I always tell Donna Brothers and Lafitte and the folks at NBC, I love their coverage because I love to hear the stories, and lots of wild stories. And I know the Venezuela side of this is also involved with Gunnevera. We got Pletcher coming in. One of the storylines for me is that Bob Baffert's not here, right?
Yeah, and he loves coming to Baltimore. I think everybody loves coming to Baltimore. It's a fun place to come for the race. It's a great city. There's not as much pressure on these trainers as there is for the Derby, especially if you win the Derby. That one's you've got that. No matter what happens in the Preakness, you've already won the Derby. But people love coming here, and he had what everybody, I think, would agree was the best 3-year-old earlier this year. He won a race at Santa Anita called the San Felipe. And as the horses were galloping out after the race and pulling up, his jockey jumped off of him. He heard a pop. The horse fractured a bone in his lower leg and needs surgery. I think he's going to come back later this year. We all hope so. But that was Bob Baffert's best 3-year-old. He had a couple of others that didn't quite make it to this level. But he did win the Kentucky Oaks this year. So don't feel too sorry for him.
Well, yeah, and I'm sure Pletcher, who spent many years with his nose pressed up to the glass, and to some degree still does that with the Preakness because he doesn't like this back-to-back racing in 2 weeks, he is moved front and center here to maybe have that race, have that chance, have that go at Belmont 3 weeks from now to have a Triple Crown winner.
Well, he'd love to do that. And you're right. He does not like to run horses back in 2 weeks, which is why he's only had 8 starters in the Preakness. He did bring Super Saver here after he had his previous Kentucky Derby winner. He didn't run well. Has he done things differently with Always Dreaming, or is Always Dreaming maybe a better horse than Super Saver? I think probably he is. So Todd is as good a trainer as there is in the business. He does like to give his horses a month between starts if he can, and you mentioned earlier that the possibility of changing the Triple Crown. I was an advocate for changing it because I think the way it's been, winning the Preakness has become too easy. I think if you give a little bit more time between races, you'll get more horses from the Derby coming back to run in the Preakness, and that's going to make it harder to win the Triple Crown. But But boy, my advocacy of that idea didn't go over too well. A lot of people thought I was a traitor. How could you change the Triple Crown?
Well, everyone had talked about that, and I think there was a little inertia for it a couple of years ago. I don't hear as much about it now, but it seems to make sense to me. It seems to make sense to stretch it out, to stretch out the drama, to make the reality show a little longer, to give everyone a chance to participate to some degree, and maybe throw away that whole notion that this 2-2-3 business that's going on, that's probably not good for the animals, right?
It's probably not. It's probably not as good as giving them more rest between races. Now, the Triple Crown wasn't always 2-2-3 like
Correct,
that.
yeah.
It used to be, there used to be more time, I think. It changed around a lot in the early days, and it's only been this way, I think, since the late 50s, early 60s. So, back then, in the 40s and 50s, horses would race every 5 days. You'd have horses that would race on the Wednesday before the Kentucky Derby and then come back on Saturday and run on the Derby.
That would be something like Palmer would say. I used to take the ball every fourth day and go out there and throw 9 innings, 11 or 13 if I pitching and horse racing. And these creatures are so valuable, right? We talk about Royal Mo this week and changing the face of this race, or you talk about Mastery not being involved in the whole series, and we've seen these animals euthanized on the back. It's heartbreaking when that happens. So, keeping these animals safe should be front and center for the men who own them, quite frankly, right?
Well, I think they do a good job looking at these horses during the Triple Crown. What happened to Royal Mo was really, really unfortunate. The horse was sound. Things like that can happen. They're athletes. I don't like saying it's part of the game because we want to make it as little a part of the game as possible. But there are always going to be horses that get injured. There's just, when you put a horse out there on those 4 legs and they run as fast as they do, and they have as much heart and as much competitive nature as they have, they're going to get hurt. But I think the Triple Crown tracks do a good job of monitoring the condition of the horses. They have more vets that look at them throughout the Triple Crown period. Obviously, the drug testing is at a higher standard for the Triple Crown. They do out of competition testing for all 3 races, to make sure that nobody's cheating using blood doping or steroids. So, but we're still going to have those problems. And the only good thing about Royal Mo is I'm glad it didn't happen during the race, because that would have been tragic, and it could have caused a problem with other horses and jockeys in the race.
Hey, man, it's been great visiting with you. Learned a lot. I appreciate your time. I'm going to send everybody out to Paulick Report. That's Paulick. Ray Paulick is our guest here. He publishes all things international sports and the business of thoroughbred horse racing. He's based down in Lexington, Kentucky, out of Chicago, Illinois. Congratulations to your Cubs. I'm a Southside Aparicio guy, so, I take great angst with all the Cubs' success. But, you're getting yours this year. It's never as easy as American Pharaoh made it look, right?
I remember that shortstop that played for the White Sox in the late 50s and early 60s. I'm old enough to remember that, and he was a pretty damn good player.
Well, I appreciate that's my bloodline, so I appreciate that. It would be nice if anybody ever wagered on me to go in the hole and come up throwing. They're probably coming up short, but I stole things, just not bases. Hey, Ray, thanks for coming on, man. I do appreciate the time.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks.
You got it. Ray Paulick, you can find him out on Twitter at Ray, R-A-Y, Paulick, P-A-U-L-I-C-K, and PaulickReport.com. You can find me out in the Bayou Toyota Audio Vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world. On your mobile device, just download the TuneIn Radio app. We do come in crystal clear from anywhere in the world. Nashville trip on sale. Green Bay on sale. London. We're closing that down here in the next couple of weeks, so toss me an email if you're thinking about going to London, nasty@WNST.net. Facebook Live, YouTube Live. We're out on Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, anywhere the internet is served. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.